You break your arm, the x-ray shows a clean, jagged white line.
Right.
The doctor points to it. Broken or not broken?
Right. It's pretty cut and dry.
Yeah, it is a binary reality. But when you try to x-ray the human soul to see if you are actually a good person, the machine is rigged.
Oh, big time. We rig it ourselves, honestly.
We really do. Welcome to Reformed Thinking. We are opening up a rather intense diagnostic file today.
And it is definitely intense.
Yeah, we're looking at excerpts from Charles Simeon's Horae Homileticae, Volume 15. Specifically, we're zeroing in on his analytical sermons covering Romans chapter 2.
Which is just a brilliant section of text.
Oh, for sure. So our mission for this deep dive is to examine how human nature just totally deceives itself through outward religious observance.
Yeah, that whole universal human trap of pointing the finger and judging others.
Right. And we want to look at the precise criteria of divine judgment. Like, we want to cut through all the self-righteousness to find genuine inward faith.
Because this material operates like a mirror, you know? It reveals the actual hidden motives of the human heart.
It's super convicting. But before we get into the text itself, setting the historical and theological context here provides a really solid starting point.
I agree. So Charles Simeon was preaching and writing to the Church of England in the late 18th and early 19th centuries.
Okay.
And he faced just immense opposition in Cambridge, like serious pushback.
Wait, like actual physical opposition? Or just, theological arguments?
Oh, physical. I mean, people literally locked their pews so his congregants could not sit down.
Wait, really? That's so petty.
It gets worse. Students would actually throw rocks through the windows during his services.
Wow! Are you serious?
Yeah. So when Simeon writes about human prejudice or defensiveness and just the sheer hostility of the human heart toward truth, he's not speaking from some ivory tower.
Right, he lived it.
He absolutely did. He is speaking as someone who had to figure out how to break down the defensive walls of an incredibly hostile religious audience.
Man, that context makes his analysis of the Apostle Paul's approach in Romans 2 makes so much sense.
It really does.
Because Simeon notes that Paul doesn't use a direct attack on his primary audience, right? Which was the religious establishment.
No, not at all. He doesn't go straight for the jugular.
Right. Instead, Paul uses this very circuitous tactical argument. He exposes the hypocrisy in everyone by delaying his direct naming of the Jewish audience.
The mechanism there is just fascinating.
How so?
Well, think about it. If Paul points the finger immediately, the listener's brain treats it like a physical attack.
Oh, like a fight-or-flight response?
Spot on.
Yeah.
The amygdala fires and logic just shuts down completely.
That makes total sense.
So, by telling a story about someone else first, he bypasses the ego's defense system entirely.
It's like a Trojan horse for truth.
Yeah, a great way to put it. Paul is writing to a mixed audience in Rome, and he knows that if he immediately targets the religious establishment, they will literally stop listening.
They'll just tune him out.
Right. Simeon points out that this delay in mentioning their name proceeded from a delicacy of feeling.
A delicacy of feeling. I like that.
Yeah, Paul feared that a direct attack would arm their minds against him. I mean, when you confront someone with their flaws directly, the immediate response is self-preservation.
You justify, you rationalize.
And you deflect every single time.
Which brings us to our first major area of focus for you guys listening, the universal trap of the pointing finger.
This is based on Simeon's analysis of Romans 2:3-5, right?
Yep. We naturally deflect our own guilt by pointing at the flaws of others.
It's the oldest trick in the human playbook.
Truly. So, to categorize this, let's create a framework. We can call it the hypocrisy matrix.
Oh, I like that. The hypocrisy matrix.
Yeah. So Simeon divides this human tendency into 4 distinct quadrants of judgment.
Okay, lay them out for us.
Let's look at the first quadrant, the secular world judging the secular world.
Right.
So we see the old condemning the young for their follies, and then the young condemning the old for their severity.
It's a constant cycle.
Yeah, and we see the wealthy resenting the idleness of the poor, and the poor just, inveighing against the selfishness of the wealthy.
And then you have the bigot and the free thinker locked in mutual crimination, just constantly pointing at each other.
The underlying argument Simeon makes here is it's actually quite uncomfortable.
Why is that?
Because he says the extreme blindness of human nature means that the more someone is under the dominion of pride or vanity or covetousness, the more they hate those in whom those same evils are predominant.
Oh, wow. So, like, an arrogant person is always the most offended by another person's arrogance.
Spot on. They are looking at a reflection of their own heart, but instead of recognizing it, they attack it.
That is wild.
Right. They overlook their own peculiar failings and condemn without reserve the characteristic failings of others.
It's just massive psychological projection.
Exactly. I mean,
Right.
yes, absolutely. It allows them to feel a sense of moral superiority while remaining completely blind to the reality that they share the exact same core defect.
Okay, so that leads us to the second quadrant in our hypocrisy matrix, which is the world judging those who profess religion.
Oh, boy. Society loves this one.
They really do. Secular society just fixates on the failures of religious people.
Yeah, it's constantly in the news.
Right. And Simeon points out that to be religious is, with the generality of the world, seen as a severe offense.
Derogatory names are affixed to the godly just to make them despised.
Yeah, and if an occasion arises where a professor of religion acts, unworthy of their profession, the ungodly world just rejoices.
They throw a party.
They do. They use one hypocrite to condemn an entire group.
The psychological comfort this brings to the secular person really cannot be overstated.
Oh, for sure. Because if the secular world can find a flaw in the religious person, it validates their own rejection of the moral standard.
It's like, see, they're messed up too, so I don't have to listen to any of this.
Right. And Simeon draws a straight line back to the early church to illustrate this dynamic.
What does he say?
Well, he asks if the apostles were wild enthusiasts or if Christ was lacking in prudence, yet they were regarded as the filth of the earth. The very people who secured false witnesses to execute an innocent man could find no evil in themselves, only in the one they hated.
That is so dark.
It is. The world will take the sins of a fallen believer and use them to vilify the whole church, completely overlooking their own impiety in the process.
It is a defense mechanism designed to keep the demands of a holy God at a comfortable distance.
Absolutely.
But wait, if the secular world is projecting their guilt onto the church, isn't the church doing the same thing right back?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah, so that moves us to the third quadrant where it flips, the religious judging the world.
And here we get the classic story of Nathan and David.
Right. So David committed adultery and murder.
Major, major crimes.
Yeah. And Nathan tells a story about a wealthy man who steals a poor man's only beloved lamb.
A pretty minor crime in comparison, right?
Right. But what is fascinating here is not the sin itself. It is David's psychological blindness.
Yeah, he loses his mind over this sheep.
How does a guy who just committed murder genuinely get outrage over stolen sheep?
Because our ego acts like a corrupt defense attorney.
Oh, that's a good analogy.
Thanks. The moment we are put on the stand, our ego immediately starts pointing at the crimes of the jury just to distract the judge.
Look over there.
Right. David's reaction is the ultimate example of unsubdued pride causing uncharitableness.
He was ready to execute a man for a minor offense while his own unparalleled crimes were completely forgotten.
His conscience was totally asleep regarding his own actions, but hypervigilant regarding the hypothetical actions of another.
And Simeon applies this directly to religious professors, right?
He does. He talks about those who hold an utter contempt for the ungodly. They view outsiders with this harsh severity, speaking of them as, wretched, blind creatures.
Which is so different from Christ. Simeon contrasts that harshness with how Christ handled the wealthy young ruler.
Oh, that's a brilliant comparison.
Yeah, Christ saw that the young man's love for earthly things would hold him back. But the text says Christ loved him.
He had compassion on him.
Right. Christ had compassion on him for the good that was there, even knowing the outcome.
But modern religious people would view that same outsider with unqualified contempt, missing the compassion entirely.
It's tragic. People can cry, Lord, Lord, with great confidence while harboring a heart entirely disconnected from Christ's compassion.
Because the self-righteousness acts as an anesthetic to their own need for grace.
An anesthetic. That hits hard.
It does. Which brings us to the final quadrant. The religious judging of the religious.
Ah, the sectarian battles.
Yeah. Simeon mentions the historical reality of Rome placing official curses on Protestants, declaring that no one outside their communion can be saved.
Just writing off whole groups of people.
Right. And he is quick to note that Protestants do the same thing, utilizing the exact same bigotry.
We really do.
To be of their specific party becomes a qualification for heaven, and dissent from it becomes a preparative for hell.
The weak judge the strong, and the strong despise the weak.
It is the narcissism of small differences.
What do you mean by that?
Like, when two groups share 99% of their theology, they will often go to war over the 1% to prove their own superior purity.
Wow. That explains so much of church history, honestly.
It really does.
So we have this hypocrisy matrix where everyone is pointing at everyone else.
Right. Nobody's looking in the mirror.
We assume a position of authority to pass a sentence of condemnation on those who do not walk in the way that seems good to us.
But the question is, how does this illusion break?
Yeah, how do we get out of this matrix?
The illusion breaks through a divine reality check.
Okay, break that down for me.
Well, Simeon asks a series of pointed interrogations based on the text to expose the vanity of these hopes.
God weighs the spirit by a perfect law, right? Not by our partial, self-made standards.
Spot on. God will not admit the estimate we have made of our own character. He judges righteous judgment.
So all our self-justification is useless.
Completely. By overlooking your own sins and passing judgment on others, you are treasuring up wrath against the day of wrath.
That phrase, treasuring up wrath, is terrifying.
It should be. You are actually despising divine forbearance.
Because God's patience is meant to lead to repentance, but the hypocrite interprets God's silence as God's approval.
Yeah, they think, well, lightning hasn't struck me yet, so I must be doing great.
Treasuring up wrath. It means you are adding to the mass day by day, load upon load.
Like a bank account of judgment.
Yikes. So, since human judgment is so flawed and hypocritical, our conversation really has to shift to how God actually evaluates a life.
Which moves us to Simeon's analysis of Romans 2.611.
Focusing on the divine scales and the litmus test of action.
The standard outline from the text is clear. God renders to every person according to their deeds.
That is the rule of judgment.
It is not based on your theological affiliations, the name of your church, or how loudly you condemn the sins of the culture.
It is based on what you actually do.
Yes. Simeon breaks down the distinct character of the godly versus the ungodly based on this standard.
Okay, let's look at the godly first. What does Simeon say about them?
Well, their goal is seeking glory, honor, and immortality through patient continuance in well-doing.
Patient continuance, so it is not a quick sprint.
No, not at all. It is not an emotional high at a weekend retreat.
It is a sustained, deliberate marathon.
Yeah. Simeon compares it to the sun in the firmament prosecuting its destined course.
I love that imagery. The sun just keeps rising every day.
Right. The godly face intense opposition from the outside world. Their hands sometimes hang down, and their knees feel feeble.
But they rely on God for fresh supplies of grace to continue.
Yes, that reliance is key.
Conversely, Simeon details the nature of the ungodly.
And he clarifies that the ungodly are not just the obvious rule breakers or, criminals of society.
Right. The defining characteristic is that they are contentious.
They refuse to obey the truth.
But this refusal does not stem from a lack of intellectual evidence, does it?
No, Simeon argues it stems from the predominance of some unrighteous principle.
They yield a willing subjection to pride, or the love of this present world, or unchecked desires.
The principles of truth are too humiliating for them, and the precepts require too much self-denial.
They argue against the truth because accepting the truth would require them to actually change their lifestyle.
Exactly. Yes, you hit the nail on the head.
But let's pause here. I think we need some pushback on this.
Okay, what are you thinking?
If Simeon is operating within a framework of free grace, which we know he is based on his historical context and theological background, why is there such an intense focus on works and patient continuance?
That is a really common question.
Right. How does he reconcile this focus on deeds with the concept of unmerited favor?
Simeon synthesizes this by presenting the complete gospel picture. He doesn't just look at one angle.
Okay.
He argues that the gospel exhibits the deity in three distinct roles.
Three roles. What are they?
First, as a merciful father, offering salvation through the sacrifice of his son.
Okay, that's the grace part.
Right. Second, as an almighty sovereign, dispensing blessings according to his own will.
And the third?
And third, as a righteous judge, who will evaluate deeds as evidence of inward reality.
Ah, as evidence.
Yes. Simeon insists that if you exclude any one of these roles, the gospel is mutilated and its glory obscured.
So justification is by faith alone, but the faith that justifies is never alone.
Bingo. It always produces tangible, verifiable fruit.
So it is not about earning the salvation. It is about the deeds acting as the undeniable proof that the salvation actually occurred.
Precisely. Simeon tackles a specific error that was prevalent in his day, and honestly, it remains common now.
What's the error?
He addresses those who have an exclusive fondness for the deeper doctrines of predestination and election.
Oh, the theological debate crowd.
Yeah, the folks who pour contempt on examining the evidences of their conversion, treating it as mere legalism.
Simeon asserts that faith is not the only evidence of faith,
Right. You cannot simply rely on a feeling of persuasion in your own mind.
because feelings lie.
They absolutely do. You must look at the actual fruit produced in your life.
He brings up the Apostle Paul before his conversion as an example of that, right?
He does. Paul had a full persuasion in his own mind that he was right while he was persecuting the early church.
He genuinely thought he was doing the will of God.
Yeah. A strong internal feeling of rightness is not enough. You have to evaluate your life by the fruits you produce.
And that leads into Simeon's discussion of privilege. He talks about the Jew first and also the Gentile.
This introduces the concept that privilege equals liability.
Privilege equals liability. Break that down for us.
Well, having more spiritual advantages, like being raised in a religious home, having access to sound teaching, or possessing a wealth of biblical knowledge.
That doesn't grant you a free pass.
No. In fact, it brings a much stricter judgment if those advantages are abused.
That is a terrifying thought for anyone who grew up in the church.
It really is. The Jew has a priority in happiness if they utilize their advantages for holiness.
But they also have a fearful precedence in punishment if they abuse them.
Right. God shows no respect of persons based on external distinctions.
The scales of justice are calibrated perfectly to the amount of light and truth a person has received.
Which is completely fair when you think about it.
It is, but it's heavy. That reality moves our discussion to Romans 2.1723.
Okay, yes, the hypocrite's mirror and the blind guide.
This section analyzes the specific danger of possessing religious knowledge without corresponding action.
Simeon lays out the mindset of the original audience here, and it is characterized by a hollow boast.
The audience Paul was addressing rested in the law. They made their boast of God.
They knew his will and approved the things that were more excellent because they were instructed out of the law.
They possessed a comprehensive summary of their duties, a form of knowledge.
And because of the superior light, they assumed vainglorious titles.
Like what?
They called themselves guides of the blind, lights of those in darkness, instructors of the foolish, and teachers of babes.
Talk about an ego trip.
Seriously.
They felt completely secure because they had the right vocabulary and the right heritage.
But then comes this stunning indictment from Paul.
What does he ask them?
Paul asks, "You who teach another, do you not teach yourself? You who preach against stealing, do you steal?
You who say a man should not commit adultery, do you commit adultery?
You who abhor idols, do you commit sacrilege?"
They proclaimed moral commandments with great authority, but they were as much addicted to these crimes as the surrounding heathen nations.
They professed an abhorrence of physical idolatry, but they sacrilegiously robbed God of the honor and obedience that was his due.
By their gross hypocrisy, they caused the name of God to be blasphemed among the nations around them.
Because when the teacher of the law breaks the law, the observer does not just reject the teacher.
They reject the lawgiver.
Yes. The whole system loses credibility.
Simeon leads the discussion into a searing modern application for his own contemporary world, doesn't he?
It does, and he pulls no punches.
He points out that the advantages of the ancient Jews were nothing compared to the advantages of the Christian world, who have the full revelation of redeeming love.
Yet, Simeon points out the atrocities committed in the very name of religion.
This part of the source material was just so sobering to read.
Simeon highlights some horrific historical realities to make his point.
Like the men stealers in Africa.
Yes, referring to the brutal realities of the Atlantic slave trade, perpetrated by nations that proudly called themselves Christian.
He notes that the phrase, "me no Christian," was, in the mind of an African, a severe reproach to the supposed Christian nations.
Because of the rampant greed and cruelty they witnessed, the very name of Christ became an offensive concept to millions who were victims of this hypocrisy.
The cognitive dissonance of seeing a slaver hold a Bible, it completely shattered any credibility the faith might have held in their eyes.
It makes complete sense why they would reject it.
He also brings up a staggering historical detail about an anniversary in the island of Japan.
Oh, the Fumi. This is intense.
It is. The people there held an annual event specifically dedicated to trampling on the cross.
Entirely because of the abhorrent actions and rapacity of the Jesuits of former days.
The disconnect between the profession of love and the actions of greed and violence created a multi-generational hatred for the symbol of the faith itself.
When the symbol of love becomes the symbol of trauma, the damage takes centuries to undo.
Man, Simeon points out that professors of religion often set up for teachers while they themselves need to be taught the fundamental rules of duty.
Right. Deceit, lying, covetousness, fraud, petulance, and idleness are frequently found as predominant features in persons professing godliness.
They bring the very profession of piety into general disrepute.
The outside world looks at the behavior, compares it to the stated beliefs, and concludes that the entire system is a fabrication designed to exert control.
So what does this all mean for the listener?
That's the real question.
Right, if the name Christian became an insult in some parts of the world because of these inconsistent actions, how does Simeon tell his audience to evaluate their own standing?
Well, Simeon concludes that an inconsistent profession only incurs deeper guilt.
Deeper guilt, not a pass.
Definitely not a pass. A profession of love to God involves you in a heavier accountability.
If outward religion is used as a cloak to veil gross hypocrisy, it is worse than sheer ignorance.
Outwardly naming Christ while departing from his ways means your religion is vain.
Simeon says that everyone, regardless of their labels or their clear theological views, must place their hand on their mouth.
Put their mouth in the dust and cry, unclean, unclean.
They must recognize their complete lack of standing apart from genuine inward grace.
Because the labels don't save you.
Which naturally brings us to the next point. If the outward labels and boastful claims are worthless, what actually constitutes genuine faith?
That question transitions our deep dive into Simeon's exposition of Romans 2.2829.
The anatomy of genuine faith.
It comes down to a contrast between outward and inward reality.
Simeon points out that circumcision and baptism are mere signs.
Right, they're shadowy representations of something inward and spiritual.
They are intended to point to the washing of regeneration and the changing of the heart.
Because true religion does not rest in the letter of the law. It goes to the spirit of it.
It inclines the heart to an unreserved compliance with the will of God.
If you lack the renovation of your inward person, a physical rite or an external washing is completely worthless.
You are simply applying an external marker to an unchanged nature.
Like painting over rust.
Right. And the danger of resting in the form is universally common.
People trust that because they were born to certain parents or baptized or instructed in truth, they are secure.
But Simeon references the stern warnings from John the Baptist and Christ himself.
Physical descent from Abraham guarantees nothing.
Christ told the religious leaders of his day that despite their lineage, they were not doing the works of Abraham.
The form of godliness lacking its vital substance is completely useless.
It is like having the deed to a house that burned down 10 years ago.
Oh, that's a great way to think about it.
The paper is technically accurate, but the reality it points to does not exist.
Simeon uses striking imagery to explain God's evaluation metric here.
What does he say?
Well, man's approval is confined to the outward forms. We applaud the ceremonies and the public displays.
We love a good show.
We do. But God sees through the deceptive veil. God is actually disgusted by the self-exalting thoughts of a proud Pharisee.
Simeon uses the phrase that it is like smoke in his nose.
Smoke in his nose. It excites disgust and abhorrence in the divine mind when someone brings an outward performance while harboring an unchanged, proud heart.
Because the performance itself becomes an insult to the omniscient nature of God, who cannot be fooled by theater.
God is not impressed by our acting skills.
Not at all. What God actually prizes is so different from what we naturally assume.
He values the hidden heart.
He looks for the silent sighs and groans of a penitent heart.
That is the inward reality that brings praise from God, not from men.
The truest marks of faith are often the ones completely invisible to the crowd.
Yeah, is the private reliance on God, the quiet turning away from a hidden sin, the genuine grief over personal failures.
That hidden reality is recorded in the divine remembrance.
Simeon encourages those who are cultivating a spiritual and heavenly mind. They might be derided by the world as fanatics.
And their praise is certainly not of men.
But God beholds them with pleasure. He accounts them his children.
It is the hidden person of the heart that holds true value in the divine scales.
When all the outward scaffolding of religion is stripped away, the only thing that remains is the actual living communion between the soul and its creator.
It's all about that inward reality.
100%.
Well, as we synthesize the takeaways from all of these sources today, a few core insights stand out very clearly.
First off, human nature inherently loves to judge others as a defense mechanism to hide its own flaws.
We use the failures of others as a shield against our own guilt, locking ourselves into the hypocrisy matrix.
Secondly, God is not fooled by our deflections.
Right. He will judge based on actual deeds and inward reality, not outward labels or theological vocabulary.
And third, possessing religious privileges without experiencing an inward change leads to catastrophic hypocrisy.
Bringing disrepute on the very faith we claim to hold.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the warning Simeon gives is incredibly sobering.
What's the final implication here?
Relying on outward rituals, theological correct statements, or your association with a specific religious group is the quickest way to deceive your own soul.
Because you construct a fortress of assumed safety out of materials that will not withstand the divine reality check.
The scrutiny must be turned inward, asking if the heart has been truly changed, rather than evaluating if the external habits conform to a social expectation.
That leaves us with a lot to process.
It's heavy stuff.
It really is. I want you, the listener, to consider this final thought as we close out today.
What's the question?
What if the very religious rituals, routines, or labels you rely on for peace of mind are the exact things blinding you to your own need for a savior? Thank you so much for joining us on Reform Thinking today. We look forward to continuing the conversation next time.